Welcome to the Well-ish podcast, sponsored by Iowa Specialty Hospital, where real life meets better health. We're your hosts. I'm Derek.
I'm Anthony. Let's dive in.
Welcome into another episode of the Well-ish podcast. We are super excited to be here today. Once again, I'm Derek.
I'm Anthony.
We're hosts again, and I made the joke last time. They keep letting us in, and I almost did it again, so I'm glad I didn't. But today we are super, super excited to be joined by our boss, Steve Simonin. He is the president and CEO of Iowa Specialty Hospitals and Clinics. He's a longtime leader in rural healthcare administration, spent multiple decades helping transform rural hospitals into more stable, community-centric systems. He's led the merger of two hospitals into a thriving system in north central Iowa. He's recognized by the Iowa Rural Health Association for leadership in rural health, and he's known for his administrative impact, and we definitely love having him here. Super excited to have you on today.
Cool. Happy to be here.
Perfect. Okay. Well, so really we want to take a chance to get into you a little bit. And I know, and this is something that every employee at Iowa Specialty, we all start off by getting to know you a little bit. That's one of the first things we get to do. But I think let's talk about, number one, you're 61 years old, right? I want to know kind of right now, what are the things that you like to do with your health? What is your daily life looking like from that perspective?
In the present, as of today, I'm big in biking. So this is going to be our 10th year for RAGBRAI.
Oh, awesome.
Every year, and the team just gets bigger and bigger. We stayed here actually during the 50th here in the clinic because it went through Des Moines. And gosh, I think there was like 45 to 50 people who it was like huge.
Just sleeping bags out there? Or?
I had the office that has the scale in it. That's so I'm like, close the door. I'm like, it was great. But it was really, really hot that year. So anyway, so this is our 10th year. We're doing a lot of biking. Like this weekend, I've got the Burr Ride, which is a 25-mile ride from Perry to Rippey and back. If it's blizzarding or if it's 40 degrees, and it's going to be 40 degrees this year, so we're very excited.
Nice.
Yeah, and just about 300 to 500 people, and just on their big fat tire bikes, and
awesome.
So I like to bike. I've got a Peloton at home. I'm on that for the last probably 7 years, every single week. So I've got a long streak going, and about every other day, 30 minutes to an hour on that, and doing a little lifting. I need to do more lifting. What else? I mean, do you want me to get into my diet and stuff like that?
You can if you want. I mean, I think what I'm trying to get at is kind of where we're at now and then how we got there, right?
Some other cool things that I'm doing right now is I've got a band. So we're playing, we're playing quite a bit. Like next week, we're playing at the Brew up in Clarion every third Tuesday, and it's a ukulele band. I play my guitar, and I just bought a banjo actually.
Really?
So that's exciting, and singing a little bit, and just trying to make my life as big as possible. I've got my job, which is huge, but my other stuff in my life is important as well. So.
That's awesome. Do you, so speaking of, last time I saw you, it was in passing. You probably might not even remember it, but you were getting ready to make some sort of dish for a book club. Is that
I've got book club tonight, actually.
Book club tonight. Okay. All right.
Yeah. And we have it every month, and I have it at my loft downtown. And it's a group of about 10 to 15 people, and get together and we just talk books and have a little wine, and I'm always making good food and stuff. So.
Do you like to cook?
Yeah, I do like to cook.
Awesome. Has that always been something you've enjoyed, or?
Yeah. Mom taught school before the kids came, and then she took off time for the kids. And then when I was in junior high, she went back to work. And so she was never around at dinner. And my older sister tried to cook, and she was a horrible cook. Horrible. And I'm like, no. So I started cooking back then. And, I love to cook.
What are some favorite dishes that you like to make now?
Well, I'll tell you about tonight's dinner is my lasagna. So it's with Graziano sausage and lots of hamburger and nice cheeses and different things. And we're going to do a ciabatta with it and a nice big Italian salad. And
what time's book club?
Yeah, feel free. There's a lot of it. I always force everybody to go home with leftovers.
That's fun. You do that every month, you said?
Yeah.
In the book, you said you would talk books. I'm assuming it's the same book each month. Like you guys are all talking about the same book.
Yeah, we're talking about the same book. So we assign a book and then we read it. This one was Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. I think John something. Anyway, he's the one who wrote Fault in Our Stars.
Oh, yep.
Okay.
It was a big movie and stuff, but it talks about the history of tuberculosis and how it's affected history throughout the world forever. And cities were brought up, like Colorado Springs was originally designed as kind of a city for people with tuberculosis because it's in the mountain and da. I mean, so it's just fascinating.
That is
So
interesting.
we don't do all nonfiction because I'm not a big nonfiction person. So we're also doing a lot of mind candy.
Yeah, that's fun, right?
Yeah.
How did you guys get this started? When did this start, this book club?
Gosh, 5, 6 years. I think it was before COVID. So it was in '99. And it was just a group of people who, book clubs are fairly popular. So it was a lot of health executives who kind of originally came together. Now it's artists and bikers and some health people. And
It's evolved quite a bit.
yeah, and it really, really has.
Oh, that's neat. That's something that a couple episodes ago we commented on. It's the year of community. That just seems to be the common theme that we keep bringing up is that term and like what community means. And book clubs is kind of along the same realm as something I want to get started, but it's hard to get those things started. So, and you've been doing that for multiple years. That's great.
Yeah. People always say, well, we can have it other places. I'm like, so I have a loft downtown and I'm like, it gives purpose to the loft. Otherwise I come down on weekends because it's right at the confluence of all the bike trails. So, I mean, it's great for my biking. But also it's a good reason to use it and people know where to go. So the less you change, the more people are like looking forward to it is what I found.
Yeah. So this group of people that have now it's morphed and changed and you have a strong group now, it sounds like. Do you feel like that's something that you have always searched for in your life? Is that kind of amalgamation of people, or is that something that's new as you've gotten a little older?
That's a good question. I've always had a big group of friends, but I grew up in Sioux City, and a lot of my friends went to college with me down at the University of Iowa, and then scattered throughout the United States. So, I mean, we have a lot of friendships on text and things like that. But really, local friendships, that's a really hard thing for a 61-year-old guy, to make. And the biking group allowed for that. And I got into actually the group that took me in was the Iowa Women on Wheels group. So it's a bunch of gals my age that said, "Oh yeah, okay, Steve, you can come in," and then their spouses and partners and things came in as well. So there's a bunch of guys, but it's a good group. And then this book group, kind of once we started bringing in some artists and some other people outside, it's like I have different groups of friendships right now. So that's really important. The social part is huge for guys who are anybody who's getting close to retirement and things. So,
absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think social groups in general, especially on the men's side, is a challenging thing to come across. Honestly, right? Yeah. We don't give ourselves enough credit to about all the other things that we do in life, and I feel like we put pressure on ourselves to keep achieving, but we have to achieve on our own. And, it's more important to be able to, spread that throughout different groups, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We have to, achievement, but we have to back the ego out of it and start being a lot more vulnerable and humble with regards to our faults and our strengths and things, and to be able to adapt. So that's the one thing that I've always been in bands. I mentioned my band, and I've been in bands since high school. I think my first band was in 7th grade, is one of the pitchers, and we used to play at all the bars in high school. So it's like I look at 10th graders now, and I'm like, what were my parents thinking? Allowing us to play like 4 sets at a bar, or we used to play for the Mother Truckers, which was a group out of Sergeant Bluff, Iowa, at the VFW, and we'd play for them like in 10th and 11th grade. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. So I've had bands all throughout, and the good thing about a band is you come from a leadership standpoint where you're always in charge, and you come into a band. Whether it's a band or it's a choir or it's a handbell choir or it's a team or whatever, and you have to be everybody's on the same level. and listening to each other. I mean, it's so important. So it teaches you the other skills.
That's awesome. That's so cool to hear how you kind of explain that and how it's evolving. I think that's another big word for it too. Let's back up a little bit now then. So looking back to when you got into healthcare, can you kind of paint that picture a little bit? Because based on what I recall from that first day at orientation, when you sat down and go through the entire history of what you've done and also Iowa specialty.
Yeah.
How did you get into leadership in healthcare?
Even goes back farther than that. So I graduated from the University of Iowa with my degree in finance in 1987, and I interviewed for a couple months, and the job market was awful at that time. That's right around the crash and stuff like that. One of the first crashes, and I discovered that I really hate banking and I hate finance. And I was like, oh my God, this is the rest of my life. So I started looking around, and I had a friend or relative in healthcare, and he said, best thing to do, go back and get your master's. Go back to the University of Iowa. It's got a 2-year program. So I went back, I got that and my MBA. And he said, we'll set you up with an internship. So that's how I got into healthcare. I had no idea I didn't even know about hospital administration, and so I just got into it that way, and ended up with an internship out in a psych and CD hospital out in New Hampshire, a for-profit. And then, I started looking at for-profit, and it was like, they're making so much money off of people's health. And, it's all about the bottom dollar. And it just gave me just a weird taste. And so I started looking, and I said, I need to go back to rural or nonprofit healthcare. So that's how I had my first hospital at age 28. And like I say in orientation, I could barely tie my shoes, let alone run a hospital. I'm like, what are they doing hiring me? I don't really know. And they're like, I'm like, they must know what they're doing. So anyway, I got to my hospital my first day, and my secretary says to me, do you know you have another hospital? I'm like, what? And she said, it's 9 beds and it's 45 miles away, and you're doing both of them. I'm like, okay. So for the next 3 years, I did both of them. The 9 bed needed a lot of repair and some changes, and it flourished. I mean, it's still going. It increased to 12 beds now, so it's like a big deal. And then after that, I came to Clarion, Iowa, in 1996. 30 years this year. Wow. It's a long time. It's longer than you guys have been alive, right?
When in 1996?
Yeah, when?
Let's just say we both turned 30 over the next 1 to 3 months.
Yep.
Okay, so you were just born. It was November 4th.
All right.
Okay, yeah.
You guys were born.
Yeah, we were alive. I can't say we were tying our shoes yet.
Not tying our shoes yet.
Yeah, anyway.
Well, I think it's important to, like, when it comes to all the things that you do now, right, where you've got all the social interactions, and like, you were going places when you were coming out of college that you weren't sure. You're like, okay, I'm just going to go and give it a shot and see what happens.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that right there, that attitude is something that a lot of our patients, when we talk to our patients, right, like, that's an attitude that we have to try and help teach them.
Yeah.
It's one of those, it's like, you know what? Like, give it a try. Give it the old college try. See what happens. See if this behavior change can lead to good things.
Dad used to say, if you need an excuse, you can always find an excuse. You can make something up. And so one of the movies that I go back to is that movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that.
Just saying yes to everything. And I was talking with Amy, the CEO up at Belmont, and we were talking about our success. And she said, we just kind of throw spaghetti at the wall, and whatever sticks, we'll just go with it. And I'm like, yeah, that works. Well, a lot of the times it helps to have a business plan as well. But, for the most part, we're open to opportunities, and the universe gives us opportunities, and we take advantage of, we're critical access hospitals, which basically means that you get better reimbursement by being small hospitals. Belmont's a critical access, Clarion's a critical access. We were the first 2 out of 3 in Iowa to go critical access. I was on the commission to bring critical access into Iowa in 1997 and 98. And so we were able to make the rules and help facilitate that for Iowa. We have 82 hospitals out of 118 in Iowa that are critical access, get better reimbursement, do better for rural. It's basically saved rural hospitals. Not because of me. I mean, it was a congressional.
The foundation that's grown because of that, right?
I will take credit, though.
Just put that one on the shelf.
Speaking of,
why not?
Speaking of ego, no. It's well, and kind of to Derek's point. So you started this with not really knowing where it was going to go to or lead to, but then you committed and you've now been there for 30 years. And I don't think you see that a whole lot anymore, especially with our generation and generations kind of closer to our age.
Yeah.
And, so what's your perspective on that? I mean, 30 years is a long time.
I'd like to say it's because I'm dedicated and hard work, but I don't like change somewhat. One of the guys that we follow, his name's Quint Studer. And I was talking to Quint in 2007 when there was a job opening at a bigger hospital. And he said, Steve, I have this spiritual feeling that you need to stay at your hospital. And I think it was just because he was using us a lot for being the example. But, Quint's he's a great friend. And so I thought about that for a while. And I'm like, we are doing some amazing things. And he said, the interesting thing is the hospital that you started at is not the same one it is today. And that was in 2007. And the hospital in 2007 is not the same as it is today. Not even 5. I mean, we changed so much. When I started, we had about 100 employees. We've got about almost 900 employees now. We had 4 providers. We have 120 providers now. We are seeing basically a lot of Iowa come to us for whether it's ortho or bariatric or babies. I mean, we're doing more babies than any rural hospital in Iowa. It's crazy. And it comes down to culture, and we've talked about culture a lot. And, people are like, well, you guys are nice. And I'm like, well, because our employees have to sign something that says they're going to be nice. And someone came down to my office and they said, everybody said hi to me in the hallways. I'm like, because they have to. But the thing is, we talk to people at orientation. We say, we have to do the 510. We have to say hi. And it's weird at first, but it makes you have such a better day. Once you start saying hi to people and once you start improving your attitude.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. When you're putting good things out into the world, it's funny how good you can feel just by doing that, right? You don't even need to get it back to you.
It gives it back.
It does.
It does. Totally.
Yeah. Leadership. So going to saying being a yes man. We actually have Lori Beatty coming in here today, and she talks about this a lot, how like when you're young and an emerging quote unquote healthcare either leader or just healthcare individual, you need to be able to be that yes man.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you were when you were younger, and maybe I'm making an assumption, but if you weren't, or if you were, when did that start to transition to start saying no a little bit more? And like, how does that look? Like, when can you start?
Healthcare is different. I mean, we have, when you're the CEO, you're kind of the boss. However, I tell people all the time, I can't really do anything. I can play guitar. I can mop a little bit and I could cook lasagna.
Back to you.
Yeah. So ask the question again. What was
Yeah. So we have Lori Beatty coming in talking about, or she's going to come talk about leadership and healthcare, but really she likes to talk about how when you're young, you should need to be more of a yes man.
Yeah.
And then eventually you have to find out how to not be a yes man, because obviously your time gets taken up by other things.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? Or what did that transition look like for you?
My first job was basically as a CEO. When I was in New Hampshire, I was a fellow, but then I jumped right into CEO stuff, and I thought I was the boss. And it's like, I don't produce revenue. It's the doctors, it's the therapists, it's the people who can build. They're the ones who I needed to listen to. And so what we quickly learned is this Quint Studer guy that I was talking about. And one of the things he says is make it the best place for employees to work, the best place for providers to practice, ultimately the best place for patients to receive care. So in the middle, the best place for providers to practice, that's my job, and to create that environment where they can do their best work. Same thing with employees, obviously. But I was at a session somewhere down in Dallas years ago, and one of the guys who was talking wrote a book. And it was like, The Patients Come Second. I'm like, well, that's a weird title. But if you don't take care of the people working for you, and if you don't show them the most love and compassion, that's my job. They take care of the patients, and but I need to set up an environment. So when you said, we say yes, not all the time to the docs, but it's within parameters, and it's with compassion. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned over the years. is that you just have to step back and take your ego out of it. You might be the boss on paper, but not really.
Yeah. You just drive the ship in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about it in the layers like that,
Mm.
where there's obviously, I mean, you think about business in that way, right?
Yeah.
Where there's client facing and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But to put it in that healthcare setting where there's a whole team of individuals whose really sole job is to make sure that those who are performing
Right.
have what they need and are happy, and then are also, I mean, they're all working together, and there's a good, like you said, like a good culture. And
Well, one of the things, and both you guys serve on this on the wellness council for the hospital, and that was kind of born out of not only saying hi and things like that, improving the culture, but a healthy employee is probably more of a happy employee, and so we want to really push wellness. So we do a lot of things at the hospital, and we're probably going to talk about wellness and
Yeah.
all that stuff. So
Be a good transition.
yeah,
what's that?
This will be a good transition. We'll just go
Yeah.
right into
So
it.
one of the things that we did years ago, and I was looking at when I first got my Fitbit, and it was like 2019 or whatever. So I've had this for a while, and I've always been into fitness, and I did my one marathon. I know that you've done like 77 or something like that.
Not that many.
And anyway, but I used to run a lot. My dad ran before. My dad was one of the he kind of started running before running was cool, like 69 or 70. He quit smoking and started running, and I was kind of the large kid and not athletic at all and stuff like that. And he always tried to get me to run. I'm like, absolutely not. And then in college, I put on a lot of weight. And so my sophomore year of college, I started working out and I started running because running was free as opposed to being in a gym. And so, anyway, so I've always had kind of fitness in my background. And so when I started at the hospital, we tried to start up some different things. And until we started really focusing on it and saying, wellness is that important that we're going to spend some hospital resources on it to help get people healthier. Maybe at some point we'll see lower healthcare costs from an insurance standpoint, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was to really improve the employees and their the culture and their attitude and their happiness and satisfaction. And I think our numbers right now are pretty fantastic. If we have probably, I said 800 to 900. It's probably around 700 to 800 full-time, maybe 700 full-time staff. And I think that probably 500 to 600 might be on the
A little
wellness.
less, 350 to 4, if I recall, because we did that whole episode on it. But yes,
Right. And so I mean that's a big number. And so I just recently told the leaders, I said, hey, awesome, you guys. There's 70% of you who are participating, 30% of you aren't. So how do you manage that up to your staff? And if you're not, this is basically a foundational thing for the hospital. We have to all be in on the culture, on exercise, on going to parades and parties and different things because we make it safe for our employees. So I keep pointing to my fitness watch, but we make it safe for everyone and say, exercise shouldn't be scary. It's about saying yes to things. You don't have to jump on and do a marathon. We're not asking for that. We're asking, get some steps in, walk around.
Tell us a little bit about your health journey and what that's been for you.
Okay, so like I said, I was running a lot in the 90s, did my marathon towards the end. A buddy of mine, actually, I was over at in Kona at the Ironman
Oh,
thing.
really?
Yeah, so a buddy was in the Ironman for a couple of years, and I'm
What year
looking
was
at
that?
what's
What
that?
years were that? Do you recall?
98, 99.
Okay.
Ooh.
You guys are about 3 and 4. And anyway, so I'm looking at all the people doing the Ironman. I'm thinking, I've been doing a lot of 10Ks and things. I can do a marathon. So we did this virtual halhigdon.com.
Oh yeah.
It was just it was
Gosh,
in
you
paper
started
form
way
then.
back then.
Yeah, it was in paper form then. Anyway, so we had people across the country like training together, and we were going to do the marathon that we did was in La Jolla, up to Carlsbad or something like that and back, and it was going to be it was in January, I think, and so I was training in Clarion in December in a winter like this like this year, and it was awful. And Clarion doesn't have like a 20-mile loop. You have to go around it like 5 times. And it was snowing and my whole head was frozen. And anyway, so I ran a lot. And then after my marathon, it was kind of hurting my body a little bit. And then my parents got sick I remember telling one of my docs that, I'm having a hard time eating after 7 o'clock. And he says, well, you have some GERD. He said, well, try this medicine. And so I took some over the counter, whatever, medicine, Prevacid or something. And I instantly gained like 60 pounds because I could eat whenever. And so I'm like, oh my God. So in 2012, we just recently had built the Belmont Hospital, and we were looking around for patients, and we were like, we have to put a center of excellence up here. What are we going to do? And so I was talking to the CEO at the time, Nancy, and I said, "Hey, Nance, let's look at bariatric. Bariatric surgery is a big deal down in Grinnell, and other rural hospitals are doing it. It might be a stretch, but let's try that." So in February of 2014, we interviewed Dr. Ibis because he was heading out to Las Vegas. We brought him up on the coldest day of the year. He's like, I'm trying to get out of this. But we talked him into staying. And so I was the first patient to have the bariatric sleeve July 21st, 2014. And I was about 300 pounds at the time, and lost like 85 pounds or something like that, and instantly started jumping on the bike. And 2016 was our first year as the ish team for RAGBRAI, and my journey started then. And one of the things that I talked about was that I have to do some major behavior modification. Because I remember laying on my couch when I was 49 years old. The short story by Franz Kafka, is it The Cockroach, came to mind. And the guy like slowly turns into a cockroach. The metamorphosis, yeah. Slowly metamorphosizes into a cockroach. And he's laying there and he's just getting stiffer and stiffer. And I'm like, I'm 49 and I feel like I'm dying. Every bone hurt and everything hurt. And I was big and not happy. And so the surgery actually, it transformed my life. But I'm like, behavior modification is a big deal. If I'm not going to eat right after that and exercise, then all of this is for naught. And so I did. And there's been some things in the last probably 10 years that, my weight started to come back on. So I started on Zepbound like 3 years ago. And so I'm really watching the GLP-1s and kind of that. And so, yeah, it's 61 and I'm feeling better than I have in a long time.
Wow.
But it's a journey.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I think it's it's one of those stories that a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's who I see. That's who those are my patients. And so to get to hear not only how you feel like it was super successful for you, but like not where you came from, where you are now, and the vibrancy with which I can feel it from you that your life has right now. And part of that is because of the biking and all of that stuff that you like to do, and made a little more possible by the steps you've taken to be in good health.
Yeah. And I think, I talk a lot about awareness and being conscious with regards to, our faults, and being transparent and being totally open to change when you need to change, and listening to the universe, and watching for coincidences, and taking advantage of things, and as CEO, so if I retire next year, I'm going to miss trying to be that example. Because if I'm not doing it, then how can I expect someone else to do it? If I'm not when I'm walking down the hall and I see a piece of trash there, if I'm not picking that up, then the people are going to see that. If I'm not saying hi, then people are going to see that. And they call me on it all the time. Well, you didn't say hi. I go, ugh. So you're on stage all the time. So being on stage also allows me to probably be better in my health journey than if I wasn't.
Do you like being on stage like that?
I don't know a difference. I've been on stage since 1990, so
it's a long time.
It's a very weird thing. When I go into the grocery store and everybody's saying, hi, Steve, I'm like, I've never seen you before. That's just a really weird place to be, but
sure.
It's where you lived. That's the life you've lived.
Yeah. And so like when I retire, probably I'm going to move down to Des Moines, and because I've got a place down here and I've got a lot of stuff going on, but it's going to be real different because people aren't going to recognize me. I've lived in my building now 7 or 8 years, and almost weekly I go up on the elevator and someone's like, "Did you just move in?" I'm like, "No, I've been here."
Do you feel like that's funny? But do you feel like, I mean, are you gonna? I feel like part of it is trying to create that stage in a new way, right? Your book club is a good example of that, right? Like continuing to be in that space where there is some sort of expectation.
Absolutely. Or do we need to evolve and take more of a passive kind of passenger perspective? I was talking about my vacation. I'm going to go on a vacation next week, and I've always been the control guy. I always get in the car, always doing it. And I'm like, I'm not going to do it on this one. I'm going to let someone else do it. That's a weird place for me to be in. So I need to get better and more used to that. Because we don't always have to be I don't always have to be in control.
I think that'll be a really interesting test for you. I was just listening to Jimmy Iovine. He's a music producer, and he is 72 years old, and he recently just stepped down from Apple. But he's explaining it as because he tried to step down, I think, about 10 or 12 years ago, and then ended up doing something else. And he had that drive, right? Because he just needed to get back into that drive. And now he goes, I'm just at a point where I want to be at peace in everything that I do. Do you think you're going to lean more towards aiming for that peace, or do you think
I'm
it's
trying? So one of my good friends is an instructor or a coach or whatever you call it for Maharishi Transcendental Meditation. So we brought her up during COVID, and I had 7 leaders and myself come together and go through the whole process of learning how to meditate. So for the 5 years, it's going to be 6 years now, every single morning at 4:30, I get up and I meditate for 20 minutes every single day, and it's probably just an extension of my sleep. But I told that to her. She goes, no, 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 it's a good thing. And but so when you consciously try and slow down, it does change. It changes everything, and not getting as excited about stuff, and learning to kind of regulate your mood, and not screaming, and not that I screamed ever, but just trying to regulate kind of my emotions. That's a good thing.
I think that's a practice, though, I've never actually once heard you bring up before. Are there other like hidden practices that you have that go to the point of that behavior modification? Because that, from the story that you've provided, I'm kind of gathering after that bariatric surgery, you've just been consistently like adding things to your life that are filling those extra buckets.
Yeah.
Right? Like the bike group, the book club, the meditation, obviously fitness in 2019 once you get it. So
Yeah.
you've been filling those buckets more. Is there anything else that is kind of hidden that you don't really talk about a lot?
So back on that though, back in the 2000s, I'm a single guy. I don't have kids and stuff. I have nephews who live close, and sisters and stuff like that. But I was trying to fill my time. And as the CEO in a town of 2,800 where a lot of the people work for me, it's not like I did a lot of social stuff just because you can't, because you're a leader in a small community. So back in the 2000s, in 2008, I built a house on the lake in Clarion. And so I thought I was going to have like this big lake life and stuff like that. Didn't work out, so I sold it. And then I opened up a bar up there. It's called Grounded, while I was doing CEO stuff. And so I was with that for 5 years. Every Saturday morning I cooked breakfast for the town, and it was great. And it's a lot of work, and it was very expensive because I lost a lot of money on it. But that didn't fill my bucket, from a social standpoint. And I thought it would. There was a great bar in the basement with my band played down there and stuff, but it just wasn't doing it. And so when I moved down to Des Moines in 2017 and then started the biking, that clicked. So, I tried a lot of things, but it's like meditation. It's like supplements. It's like different foods. It's like, you try a lot of things, and what hooks in, what complements, you take advantage of that and move towards that. You were talking about leadership a little bit ago, and my dad moved to Clarion after mom passed away, and he moved there in 2003, and he lived for about 5 years in Clarion, and so I put him to work right away, and he was volunteering, and he was up at the fitness center one time, and one of my leaders, Lorna, was running the fitness center in Clarion, and she said to Dad, "When did Steve become a leader?" And he said, "The minute he came out of his mom." He's been bossing us around ever since.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
I mean, some of it's natural, but I need to work on being less bossy.
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's always, areas that we can work on, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that adds a little bit more. It just paints that picture better as to who you are and like what you've been doing. And to Derek's earlier point, where you've tried multiple things, and even if it doesn't work out, like you give it a good try and then you move on. And I think a lot of times, especially going back to patients and everything, they're worried about trying because they fear of it not working out. But more often than not, you find something by that not working out, right? Like you have to go through these motions. You have to give these things a try in order to figure out what works well and what doesn't work well for you. And in the world that we live in, obviously, you see only what works well for people on social media, and that's challenging when that's all you're inundated with.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I grew up in the age in the 70s. We had 3 channels, and had to walk to school both ways on a hill and that whole bit. But truly, I mean, we didn't have access to a lot of that stuff. So, I'm in that generation that sees reality differently. We don't, we're still doing social media and all that, but we also knew not having any of that ever. So
It's very
we didn't have computers when I grew up.
Yeah, I was listening to one of podcasters that I enjoy listening to, and they were talking about oh gosh, it wasn't confirmation bias, it was, oh shoot, I'm gonna have to look that up, put it in the notes. But basically anyone who's successful at something is gonna be the one to share. Someone who's not successful isn't gonna share. And so they were using specifically the carnivore diet as the example. It's like, well, of course you're gonna hear a lot of success stories because anyone who's not isn't going to share anything. And I thought that was a really interesting point, right? And that's why I love this conversation right now, because you're talking about things that didn't fill your bucket.
Yeah.
We don't hear about that. That's not something that people tend to share.
Yeah.
They go, yeah, I did that, and then that's it. That's the end of the conversation. But you're saying like it took that exploration, that persistence to find the things that make you tick.
Yeah. Yeah. That's always part of the journey. So I've been writing this editorial thing for the last 30 years. And, I've got a couple massive books of all my editorials. And one of my assistants way back, Carol, put it together. And the title of it was Halfway There, and I still don't know where I'm going. But that's it. It's about the journey. So I've been with the same coach for the last 25 years, and I talked to her this morning. And when Jana first talked to me back in like 2002, she was like, "Well, what's your goal?" I'm like, "I don't have a goal. I just want to have a great journey, And I want to explore things that make it great, Because if we have a specific goal, then once we reach the goal, then what? It's like it's got to be a series of goals.
Steve, we're getting right where I wanted to go. This is awesome. So you have a coach.
Yeah.
What is that like? How long? Why? Why do you have a coach?
Well, this was back in 2000. I was looking for another job because I'd been at Clarion for 3 years, and all my friends were like moving up and things, and I wasn't getting called back on second interviews. And so someone said, "Why don't you try an executive coach? Maybe they'll tell you. Maybe they'll kind of counsel you to the place where you're finding your faults and why you're not getting called back." And so she was the one who said, "You're seeking validation for unsubstantiated results." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You haven't done anything. You don't understand healthcare for what healthcare is about." And I said, "What do you mean on that?" And she goes, "It's not all about finance. It's not all about making money and stats and things. There's another aspect to healthcare." I didn't really realize that because I'd never been affected from a personal standpoint, either in my health or my family's health or anything, until my mom got sick and was up at the Mayo, had lung cancer, and ended up dying, and she was in hospice. Did I truly move from financially focused hospital administrator to patient advocate and truly understand? And then I started seeing things, it's like waking up and seeing like all these clinicians got into healthcare because they care, because they're compassionate people, not saying anything against people in finance and business and stuff, because that's where I come from. But, a lot of times we're looking at how do you make the money? And healthcare is not about that. And I had bad experiences when I was out in New Hampshire. I didn't have bad experiences. I saw kind of what for-profit healthcare was doing to that industry. And that's like way back in the 90s, and it's probably different now. But getting into a place like rural north central Iowa where I could really impact and things that I would do, helping out with food pantries or exercise or parks or whatever in the community really had an impact on people. That was amazing. That was amazing for me.
And so like having that coach, that feedback.
Yeah.
And so you've kept with your coach now.
So I've been with the coach, she's like, I don't think anybody else has a coach for 25 years. The same one. And I'm like, whatever. I don't like change. And, I just actually, so this is a new thing. So I started with a voice coach like a month ago because I'm singing a lot in the band and I don't like my singing voice and stuff like that. So she's out of Mexico City. Her name is Luisa or something. And she's like doing weird scales and all this other stuff. And so anyway, I started, it's never too late to start lessons. I want to be that 80-year-old who goes back to college.
What about 62?
Yeah.
I don't have time right now.
Take a little break.
I'm taking voice lessons. And
I'm
in a ukulele
first.
band.
Yeah. Okay. One thing at a time. Yeah.
One thing at a time. Oh, that's awesome. I think that's a conversation we were having just the other day, talking about a coach and how so few people allow themselves to get that kind of feedback from somebody. Professional athletes, singers, and that's about where you draw the line, right? Music is kind of the other industry. People have coaches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of people go through professional development. They do continuing education, but it's so different from coaching, where someone's looking you in the face and saying, hey, that's not good enough. Here's how we can make it better. Right. And I think to hear that you do that actively, like that is one of those things that constant pursuit of, can I be just a little bit better? And I like, that is so cool. And I think that is something that people need to hear. Like even people who are president and CEO of their organization are seeking that, like, okay, how can I continue to improve myself? Yeah. Right.
It's again, getting the ego out of the way and humbling yourself and saying, I need help.
So going to the point of culture and then using your coaching, I think a mentorship when you talk about culture or when you talk about your coach, how important is mentorship within our organization? Like, how do you, like, obviously at the highest level, you're getting that coach, that mentor in a way. How do we do that across the system to improve everyone at an individual level?
That's great. They talk about mentors a lot, and my nephew works for Huron Consulting, and he went to, he's like, oh, so is my mentor, and I'm like, I didn't have a mentor, but what we're trying to do, one of the things that are trying to do, and we've had leadership development, let's say, since 2002 is our first one. And every single quarter we take the leaders off-site for 2 days. And we talk about communication, we talk about coaching, we talk about things. And then what I'm trying to do is make my leaders the best coaches for their employees, so they have to lead by example, and that's where I was saying, everybody's going to be part of the wellness journey. Everybody's going to be going to the parades and the parties and all that. If you don't want to do that, that's great. Don't work for me, and people are like, oh, what are you saying? And I said that years ago, and my CFO was like, I said, we were talking about employees, and I said, if they're living across the street and only working at the hospital because that's an easy paycheck, they shouldn't work here. I want to create an environment. I want to create an atmosphere where people feel honored to work for us, and love the culture, love the mission. And so kind of the long answer to the short question is I want to make all my leaders be the mentors for their staff. But also, if there's outside resources, it's so important, that we invest in that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when we were having that conversation, we've had that a couple of times about mentorship. There's just so many things in life that people either, are doing the same thing Maybe they don't like change, right? And they need to mix it up or at least have that feedback. I think feedback is so important within an organization. And the cool thing about what I really enjoy about Iowa Specialty, and I kind of was this way in other organizations too, and it rubbed people the wrong way, but is that I can have these conversations with you. I know you're not afraid to provide feedback for me, and I'm going to go the same way to the point of like whether you pick up trash or something that bothered me in a meeting, right? That goes to so many things that you talk about: culture, mentorship, like allowing us to feel safe, to your point, and trust like that what we say is it's gonna be received. Now, how well is it gonna be received? Probably pretty well, but we are able to do that.
Yeah, I think transparency and assertive communication and being honest, is so incredibly important. And, we have to be able to receive that. And we have to, be able to receive it in a good way.
Easier said than done from a personal standpoint.
Work on it, right?
Yeah.
It's just that it's that constant pursuit.
Yeah.
Constant pursuit doesn't end, which I think that circles us kind of back to what we were talking about, and that at the very beginning, like the things you're pursuing now in that constant pursuit of filling your bucket. And so I don't know what else. What other questions do you have? Anything else that you were wanting to talk about?
I got something.
Yeah, go for it.
So what would be some advice that you would provide young 30-year-old healthcare professionals as to maybe what they should be doing, what they should be looking at, how maybe they can also become a leader and someday?
Yeah, I think being honest with ourselves and our compassion, don't, it's easy to spot a fake. And if we're true with regards to, our emotions and really engage, I think years ago we were talking about satisfaction versus engagement and happiness versus satisfaction versus engagement. And it's not about being happy. Being happy is like, okay, you're happy, great. It doesn't mean you're a great worker or a great team member. Satisfied, same thing. But engaged, you have the emotion, but you're also complimenting. I give a pledge to my staff all the time, saying that if our job doesn't complement your life, your priorities are your family. It's your spouse, it's your friends, it's everything else. Work needs to be something that complements all of that. If when you guys are leaders, if your staff is like busting themselves to make it a priority to the point where the rest of their life isn't being paid attention, you're not doing the right job. You know, that needs to that needs to be great. And then we compliment. And there's some places you go where you're gonna laugh and you're gonna find your best friends and it should fulfill you. And that's my job is to make it an environment where they can be their best self and take it home and then see their priorities elsewhere.
A happy team isn't because that team's great. They're happy because they enjoy the team and the environment that they're around, right?
So there's a movie. This was way before you guys were born. In 1979, Bill Murray. It was called Meatballs. I don't know if you guys
Oh,
have saw
I've
it.
seen.
I don't think I've seen that
Yeah.
one.
I'm pretty sure I've.
And so you need to watch it. One of the scenes at the end is it was two summer camps going against each other playing flag football or whatever. And he had a team that was really awful and they were going to lose the next day. And so he's given the coaches thing the night before and big fireplace and stuff at the camp. And he says, it just doesn't matter. And he got the whole crowd. It just doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if we're the best, make the most money, have the most beautiful environment. If the people are awesome and you're giving great care and you're taking care of people and you're loving on people like, every patient is your grandma or your grandpa or your neighbor, that's what matters. It just doesn't matter what it looks like, if we've won the game at the end of the day, as far as making the most money, that doesn't matter. What matters is kind of the love.
I'm probably going to end it there.
Yep, I think that.
But I do have a question because it brought this back up. I meant to ask it earlier. Do you think that you had to have gone through that experience with your mother to really make that transition, as far as like a leader and as a professional in healthcare? Like,
Yeah. I, you know, I needed that. I wouldn't be the same person I am today. I wouldn't be the same leader. It was that was that plus some friends had some tragic things happen to them, and it forced me to really look and at the same time, Quint's there, and the Studer guy is telling me in my ear that it's about the environment, make it the best place, really understand what patients are going through. All of these things like force me to wake up and realize what the hell's going on, and become like significantly aware pretty much all at once, and when I opened my eyes and started seeing healthcare, started seeing my friends, started seeing my family, it gave me a whole different appreciation for life. Gosh, well, I was 36 at the time, 37. So something to look forward to.
I think similar, I think that's what, I've been asking myself this question. I don't know if I'll put this in the podcast just because it's me now, being vulnerable, right? But I lost my dad young too, and then some grandparents pretty soon after that. And I don't think without that, I would definitely not be the person I am today. So that's why I asked that question.
How old
because I also
were you when you lost your dad?
23.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very sudden. Actually, he would always say he doesn't want to be a potato. My grandfather had a stroke about 6 years before that, 5 years before that, and he was just not the same person.
Yeah.
And my dad would always just kind of say, and we didn't really have a close relationship, but he would just throw that out there here and there. And then we had to pull the plug though. We had to tell them to take him off of off of the ventilator and everything, and go to hospice, and he didn't make it out.
My mom was on hospice for like 8 months, from February through September, and she died September 8th in 2002, 6:30 in the morning when my dad and I were there. And she was in the late stages of lung cancer, and she was in a wheelchair, and she couldn't talk, but she was lucid. And we kind of helped her transition into, and then Dad died 5 years later in hospice, and it was some of the worst, but some of the best. And it was amazing. Yeah, it was just an amazing transformation in my life. I learned a lot of things from it. It was horrible, but it forced me to kind of take a look at everything.
Have you ever read the book? You probably have, but Being Mortal.
I actually have not.
Atul Gawande he's a doc, and he was confronted with a lot of that kind of thinking of, and he was a surgeon, and so he was, his goal being he's a cancer surgeon trying to take cancer out of people, right? And there were times where he had to confront the reality that he couldn't save that person's life. And so then facing that moment of, okay, we're putting them on hospice care, and then his own parents went through that, and it was like, how do we make them love the last days of their life and go and deal with that on our own? And so he went on this really big exploration of what that meant to different doctors and different people. And it's a good book. We had to read it in college.
Yeah. Mom was 64. That's a couple of years from my age right now. And Dad was 74. And so when I was 49 and had the surgery, both my parents were gone. And I'm like, I don't want to end up in that place. If you don't make the transition, if you don't start changing things early in life, and I'm like, I was a kind of the fat kid, unhealthy and things like that. And, I started changing that behavior in my early 20s, but, that's going to follow you. And, you have to be aware of those things. You have to be aware of your numbers, so we get the yearly physical, and I look at my bloods, and I'm talking to my provider, and, and being conscious about all of those things is so critically important.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we just had Leanne in here, Leanne Hidman, nurse practitioner, and she was talking about that, how a lot of, especially men come to her and they're in their mid 40s or 50s. And they're like, well, I didn't have any issues until I came and saw you. And to your point, well, you haven't been following up.
That's a huge, huge point. And we were having lunch here about a month ago, and I was talking to one of our providers, and I said, we need to be talking about all this health stuff and the weight loss and everything to all guys. And he said, well, usually the wives get you. I said, dude, not everybody's married. There's a lot of us who are out there who are not married, who are having, who will see a doc when they're having their first horrible heart attack. as opposed to being aware of those things. You can't do that. Not everybody has someone to say, get into the dock, do this. Women are great at it. Women are great, and we advertise to women for healthcare. We don't necessarily advertise to guys. We have to change our behavior because there's a big bunch of people who are not getting that.
Absolutely. And another thing too is using my mom's partner as an example, he had high cholesterol and he asked me like what he could be doing about it. And his doctor provided him some information too. And I provided him this information, but he didn't change a whole lot.
Yeah.
And he actually recently just had a mild, thank goodness, heart attack while they're on a boat down in Florida, not in their
But I was
home
telling you
state.
about that Prevacid that I took and instantly gained like 60 pounds. We can always mask stuff. We can take the medicines, we can do the things to like mask the disease, but it's behavior modification. It's like drinking your water, eating the right foods, getting your steps in, doing the hard stuff.
Yeah.
That was great.
Awesome. Okay. I think that's all I've got.
That's all I got too. I know we have a hard stop. Is there anything else you want to throw in there, Steve?
I just have to be back by 3. So yeah.
You're a wanted man.
It's my voice lessons with Louisa.
Oh, is it actually?
Ooh, all right. I was in an a cappella group in college.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and did music all through. So I took private voice while I was in high school, and it was awesome. I think one of my favorite parts about those lessons was that it became way less about the actual vocal for me, right? Because I'd done it growing up, and I'd done it for a long time. So eventually I kind of knew what I was doing, right? And so it became a lot more about confidence, a lot more about.
It's always about confidence. And you can have the voice of like a Bob Dylan or something like that. Not great. But it's his confidence, which makes him a star. So, and I'm very confident on the guitar, and I just bought a banjo this last week. And I think I mentioned that. And so like I'm doing a lot of, we're doing Old Crow Medicine Show, Wagon Wheel. So I just started on that on the banjo. And so you guys need to come to our Thirsty Pigs party on Ragbri. So it's in Boone on the third
I already
Saturday.
got it on his schedule.
He put it on my calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get you up there and sing.
All right.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there you go. You better start
but
warming that back up.
It's funny though to hear you talk about taking voice lessons and doing that, because that's something that I actually have a lot of experience with, but in a very different part of our lives. And yet I would bet that it's that exploration of your voice and like gaining confidence. It's not all that different.
No, it isn't, and I've always been playing the guitar. So in the band, I always played the guitar. I was saying, backup and harmonies and things like that. But, to go to that next step. So I'm trying to play my guitar with my voice lesson. I'm my voice teacher, and she's like, put that thing down.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
And now it's scary, right?
Yeah, it's very scary.
Now it's scary. Oh yeah.
But, you're really front and
Yeah,
center.
I'm taking my armor off.
My thing was a water bottle. I always had to have. It was like a protection. It was my armor. It was my shield.
Yeah.
She's like,
interesting.
put the water bottle down. I was like, okay. And now I was all of a sudden, it's like, you can see me now. Oh, God, you could see me the whole time, but it was this thing, right? So cool.
You still talk like this in front of the camera. You ever notice that?
Do I?
When we were doing those videos
My hands go
last week?
here.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's water bottle.
Yeah, it probably is. Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Round it out. Or give it a.
Well, that was awesome. We really appreciate you coming on. I think having conversations like this is really cool for us because, we want to grow as professionals and as leaders and as young men. Like that's something that's part of why we are doing this, right? Is to help make us feel confident in going out into the world and helping people each day. And so being able to sit and talk with our leader is a really cool opportunity. So thanks for coming on.
Cool. Absolutely.